So welcome today to Construction Podcast, and today we have one of my fellow alumni, good buddies for a long time. Took advantage of me playing paintball a couple weeks ago, Mr. Casey Cloward. So welcome, Casey.
Hey, anytime I can take advantage of shooting somebody and giving them a paintball welt, that's a good time.
Well, truth be told, it's my first time paintballing, and you had a couple good shots on me, so I don't appreciate that, by the way. It almost made me rethink, having you on today.
Well, I'm glad that it worked out.
So Casey is owner and founder of Raykon Construction in Utah, and they do some amazing projects. And we'll dive into this a little bit later in the conversation. But this past summer, I was finally get up there and able to tour some of your homes on the Parade of Homes. And, been following you. We've been good friends and colleagues for a long time. And I know that thankful to Pella, who I know you use a lot of Pella, and they had us out paintballing over the holiday, and you were down here with your son's baseball tournament. So that was fun. But as we dive into this, Casey, because you have a ton of experience, I've admired your business, your strategy, I've seen you grow. I've seen, the systems you've put in place. But before we get into that, I think one of the biggest challenges that many of us have with our clients is setting those expectations. When we work with the client for the first time, it can be tough, especially if the clients are going through their first build. So based on your experience, because you work with a wide array of clients, what is the challenge typically when a client is going through the process for the first time?
Well, and that's just it. Sometimes when we're in the conversations up early on up front, that's one of the first questions I have for my potential clients is, have you gone through this process before? Because you naturally will treat them differently from one aspect of the design and just the pre-construction process versus if they've done it before or if they haven't. And so one of the key and I don't determine because they've done it before or they haven't done it before, that doesn't determine if they're a good fit for our systems or whatnot. It's just kind of a different approach on how to do it because they've established their mindset accordingly. I actually embrace the opportunity for those who have not done it. It opens up a challenge of saying, hey, this is how it's going to be, and you kind of lay out the picture and put your processes and systems in place to where it comes together. But for those who have already done it before, you kind of can get an understanding of where their experience came from and based off of there. And so there's a lot of benefit for really understanding your client from the very beginning, rather than just diving into what your process and system is going to be versus how you're going to adapt to that current situation and really target their experience overall.
So I'll let you think on this, because one question I have for you, when you're working with a client that's never been through the building process, and it can be a very emotional process, it's lengthy, the time is longer than I think most people realize, getting through pre-construction, design, permit, and then the build, of course, even prolonged now because of circumstances in the industry and inflation and supply chain. But, think of some examples, like as you're setting those expectations. I can think of one. So even something really small, like in the beginning, Arizona has really unique lien laws, right? And what that means is that on the commercial side, when a commercial project's happening, subcontractors, suppliers, they can lien a commercial property, right? On the residential side, it's typically only the general contractor can. And so when we start a project, we have to file with the state, that we're working with the client. Here's the contract amount. Here's the scope of work. Here's what we're doing. And so it's like a pre-lien, just a notification. We're working together, if you're my client, Casey. And so when I think of, working with a first-time client, my office will send that pre-lien notice. They get notified that we're working with them. And so the client always calls me and they're like, Brett, what's the deal? Like, why are we starting a relationship off this way? Like, you're leaning my house already. We're just starting. I'm like, no, this is like nothing to do with any legal things. It's just, for us as a contractor to protect our rights, notify the state that we're working with you. And just like you have the rights too with the ROC, the Registrar of Contractors. And so for me, I have to make these notes, like in a little database where it's like, okay, here's some things that tend to come up with a first time client, and to make sure that here's the expectations I'm going to set. And I had a client that reached out that we were meeting in pre-construction, and they looked at me across the table and they said, hey, Brad, you make this sound like, pretty feasible, as we walk through the schedule and timeline, but where where do things kind of fall off? Like, where's the challenge? And it made me think that there's a lot of challenges throughout the building process. I know one in particular, and maybe this is the roller coaster of building, is as you get into that finish stage when you're painting, like we paint towards the end. So as you're painting and putting in wood flooring and doing trim and punch, that's kind of the chaotic part of the house. And that's when the clients are like, there's no way this house is going to finish. And I see our clients really get frustrated. It's the very bottom of that emotional roller coaster. And so from your side, what are some things that you do talk about in that sales process as you're sitting down, Casey, to say, hey, here's the expectation, just so we're on the same page moving forward?
Yeah. I'm a big believer in, and you said it, setting that expectation early on. I think that's a little bit of how I discern whether we're in the same market, or if we're the right fit, or everything going forward. So a lot of it's frankly going to be depending on the price point and the budgeting of what their expectations are going to be going into a project versus what we're producing, time after time to carry it together. So just understanding the what their target budget would be, or timeline would be, or finishing expectations might be. That's probably, I would consider this one of my, as the home. So my role is I'm the owner of the company, but I'm also in charge of the sales side of things, and so I'm trying to find the right fit. So I would consider that as being one of the highest needs and demands of my time and effort going into my business, is finding the right client, right from the very beginning. And so because you said it just as much as it is, that relationship is such a long, drawn out process, to where pre-construction can go anywhere from 6 months to 2 years to whatever that time is. Your build process another year or more, 2 years or whatever it's going to be, and then but then after that you still have your warranty period, and then I do a property maintenance program within my business as well, carrying it on. So this is a long-term commitment, as you can imagine. And so who do we want to get started with is something where I am heavily focused on. So some of those expectation settings are things simple enough as putting some parameters on time, on our individual time. So during my sit down for pre-construction, we'll take and have a definition of saying, hey, our business hours are, and when we're going to be readily available and happy to take your phone call or whatever, are going to be from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. And those are free and willing hours. Naturally, we're going to be taking time after calls and weekends, and that just happens in construction, right? But if I don't have that conversation, or I don't set that expectation in that early on, then that window is always open. And so that's when I start to get those phone calls, or have that pain point that is sometimes cumbersome or sometimes not. It just kind of depends, as long as the discussion's made. So I have a list of things like that we try to establish to saying, hey, this is what you can expect from us, and this is how we're going to be going forward, and whatnot. So, stuff as simple as the communication lines, going into how we do our draws and budgets and stuff like that, is, I think, equally as important to help them become familiar with that process. And frankly, during those conversations, you can sense if there's some uneasiness within that conversation or not, and from there you're going to start to determine if it's the right fit or not.
I love that you shared that out, and we'll get into this in a minute, as you talked about, even your process, right? As much as it comes down into budgets, billing draws, items such as that. But, you said this early on, you talked about pricing, and I think what's really hard as a contractor, I mean, there's so many variables. It's one thing if, hey, Casey, you have a finished lot that you're selling at X a foot, and competitor down the street has their finished house. You know, a client could walk through, you could talk about upgrades, and it may justify the difference in square footage costs, right? But everything's on paper. And what's unique is, as you look at the car industry, you don't have clients that come in and say, hey, I could buy this car for this much a square foot, right? Like this 4-car sedan, you know, I can get this Toyota Corolla, I could get this BMW or Mercedes or this McLaren or whatever it is. Most McLarens probably don't have 4 doors, but you know what I mean? It's like the discrepancy is so big, it's so vast, and no one's looking at this like a square footage for a car, even though it's the same size car and it's performing, you know, to some extent the same for the client. But there is a huge difference, right, in quality, reputation, you know, parts that go in, craftsmanship, you know, all those things are important. It's really hard to do that as a builder. So someone may come in and say, hey, Casey, hey, what's your price per square foot? And it's such a vague answer. You really can't justify that. I mean, there's so many justifications to pricing, right? Is it hillside? Is it flat lot? Is there HOA? Are there work hour constraints? You know, and I always say, I've said on the podcast before, it's like, well, what is the cost per bag of groceries? I mean, you know, what's the, so how do you direct the client when they come in and say, hey, Casey, I want to be at this much a square foot? Are you going through a database saying, well, based on the style you want, based on the aesthetic, based on the size of the home, well, here's one we built and it was roughly this? I mean, at least so they can see visually, here's a data point without just looking on paper.
Yeah. I think that at least with my prospective clients, they've done enough research and due diligence to even make that phone call to me, whether it be through they've seen our social media platform, they've seen our parade homes, they've seen our work around, they've been referred to us from a number of, so they're familiar with our products. I think that what's important for me from the very beginning is say, hey, our beginning price per square foot, which would include the construction cost, not the lot or the landscaping, because that's one of the point that you bring up is it a hillside lot? Is there flat lot? Are there a lot of retaining elements that come into play if we're doing a pool or not? Or there's a lot of elements there. But if I can consolidate that conversation point to just the size of the livable square footage of the house, and then educate them and say, on a home that you've seen, whether it be a picture or whether it be one that you've walked through, we were at X per square foot. And that is going to be kind of our base point. Like for example, in our industry, in my market, and this isn't relevant to your market or many markets around the country, but if our starting point is $350 a square foot, but we also have projects that are going for $650 per square foot, I think our clients want to understand what the difference is. But
right.
I also think that the starting point where they've seen our product, they've seen where we're going to be starting at, and in their mind they're doing the math. Well, I want a 7,000 square foot house at 300 square foot. That we're getting into numbers that don't fit. You know, I still got to go buy $1 million lot. I got to put $500,000 into landscaping. You know, there's different aspects that come into the play. And so I'm frankly, I found to bring that up early in conversation. And so neither side is wasting their time. They're busy. I'm busy. We just don't, there's no room. If the budget number targeted is not going to be a fit, I don't want to like center our whole discussion and relationship based on that target number. But the reality of it is, if we're not going to be there, then let's go away. So that's kind of the first, I guess, breakthrough is if we can get through an understanding and saying, hey, yeah, well, actually I can go to 400 square foot and I'm still in a comfortable position. That just kind of presses there. And I don't know if that's a similar process that you go through or fellow builders or whatnot, but I actually find myself having that conversation sooner rather than later for both parties. I think it's a benefit.
Yeah, I love that, Casey. And honestly, exactly the same. I mean, even though depending on the project, I mean, square footages could be different in markets, but essentially it's the same conversation that we have. It's not a minimum, but at least there's a price point realistically to build a home, right? It's just to do it right, whether it be waterproofing, whether it be foundationally, mechanical design as well as finishes. Like there's some level where you've built your brand, Casey, that, hey, this is really where most of our clients, they're in this range, right? And so they can't be half of that. I mean, that's just not realistic that you can perform and do a good job and keep your reputation and warranty and your services you provide. But so at some point you do have to gauge them and say, look, this is really where we're at. And if we have that conversation, it's easy to vet out, because the cat and mouse game, this is why I think it's really important that builders, look at developing that relationship early with the client, and getting early on board, whether it's a first time homeowner that's built for the first time or they've been through many, having a good builder that they can trust and that you can build this relationship is key, because now you can be open and transparent on your budget. Let's say, hey, Casey, I want you to build my house. Realistically, I have X dollars. Let's just, for easy math, just say we have $2 million to build a home. Okay, well, at least we understand what the goal is, and now we have to design around that budget, and if we're doing a, 4,000 square foot house and, you're like, yeah, we can do that. We can build a great home. There's no cat and mouse game, right? Because the challenge is you're very similar to me. You do cost plus, transparent, very laid out, very itemized. And so there's I don't want to say there's funny business. It's not like most of us contractors are trying to do a great job. It's just, being able to lay that out and be transparent with our client. Well, now that's going to really enable, if we're on the same starting point budget-wise, now we can accomplish to the end. And we try to be as accurate as we can. I know it's a little tough right now with lumber prices that fluctuate, steel, PVC, copper. I mean, these things are moving, concrete. And so we have a database, and we do have to itemize that to some point. So, how often do you get into that preliminary budget? They may say, hey, Casey, we want to be at $500 a foot, which is realistic in your market. But hey, through that year design, now it's time to hard price. Now we're off a little bit because, a year ago, 2020 is no problem. We're in 2022 now. The market's a little bit different. How do you address that difficult conversation?
One of the key lessons that I learned from one of my mentors is a way that to get an understanding that you're working with a client who's that they have some budget set aside for this, and I think you'll find these higher end builders that we are, there's that stigma that the house is the most I guess the biggest expense of a lifetime for the clients and stuff like that. But the reality of it is a lot of the clients that I work with anymore, it's not. And so it turns into a situation where it is a transactional, I guess, phase of their life, to where they're putting this big investment or this big, it is a portfolio member for their financial, and so I think that they do understand the way. Our clients aren't naive enough to know that, look, we're dealing with lumber issues. We're dealing with supply chain challenges and price increases all the way across the board. As long as we're being upfront with them and transparent in a way, and that trust factor is built, I don't think that conversation has to be as hard and difficult as one may perceive that it is, if that makes sense. Again, work with the right client, set expectations and kind of standard, and create that trust platform that you're starting from the very beginning on, to where as these challenges and this bad information that has to be given comes about, hopefully we're in a position to where we've earned the trust from our clients, knowing that we're not trying to gouge a situation. We're being mindful and not careless with the finances and relaying that forward. So it's a timing thing. There's one phase of, if we're doing it during the process of construction, we find out that, hey, our roofing package has increased another $40,000 because of whatever cost. That's just a conversation that we have during construction. If it's during pre-construction phase, and I've been in through right through this current experience. I had a client of mine who contracted me out in 2018 for whatever reason, businesses or whatever, they weren't in a position to, start really until 2000 and almost the fall of 2020 ish. And so I'm building at a completely different market, right? The challenge that I had with that specific homeowner and client is their budget didn't change. They still had the certain amount of budget. And so what we had to do is collaborate with them, and we do it as a team aspect. And frankly, we just had to scale down our finishes, which is not what I wanted to make them do. Nor did they want to do, but the reality of it is their budget was what it was back then, and it didn't necessarily change just because the times changed of when we built, and it was just an unfortunate situation. But we worked through it together. We're all in this together, and I established that from the very beginning is that, hey, we're on your side, and that's the beauty that I feel like as a contractor with a cost plus agreement. I feel like our clients get a grasp and a feel that we're on the same team. We're getting them the most for their money. Whereas if we get into these hard bid contracts and such like that, and we start to see ourselves going over budget, there might be an area, and this deals with integrity and whatnot of the type of contract you're working with. But this gets us in the area of, hey, I can cut this corner and save myself a little bit of money to and ultimately end at that final number. But that's just not the way I build, and that's not the way I want to build. I'd rather have that hard conversation and explain the way that the house should be built, and it's going to cost this amount of money according to.
I love that mentality you give and that comfort to the client, Casey, because essentially, you're a good steward, right, of their investment and what they're doing. And you mentioned that, and you've built this expectation from the very beginning and rapport that, hey, we're on your team. Like, we want to make this successful. And so what ends up happening for the client, and we've seen this both ways as well, especially in this last year, for us, most of our projects are not designed and completed in a year as far as pre-construction, right? Especially permits are taking really long in Scottsdale and Phoenix. And so it's at least a year, which fluctuates everything. And so we've had two clients. One, that they're on the same page as this 2018 client for you, where it's like, hey, we're way over budget. This is not going to work. Maybe we've had challenges of COVID or whatever. So we got to scale back. We either got to delete things, substitute finishes, VE, right, value engineer. And we have other clients that say, look, Brad, at the end of the day, yes, I may invest more out of pocket. My payment may be more, but what am I doing? Like, this is where I want to be. This is what I want. And I'm willing to bite the bullet because at the end of the day, this much more a month is not a huge deal, and I want what I want, right? But in either scenario, they know, Casey or AFT, that you're on my team. Like, you're working in our behalf. You're trying to maximize our dollar. You're trying to find value. And I think that's the biggest thing is trying to understand how to communicate that with the client. And I love that you do that. I know you well enough, Casey, that I know that's been your mantra and that's your personality, because I know we've talked many times offline. And you mentioned this. What I think is really unique for you in your market is this parade of homes. And I love that because I feel like it gives you a unique advantage. For me, it's very rare, until the end of a project that I have a window there where the home is very presentable to the public, and all my projects are build to suit. I'm not doing specs. I'm not, so everything is a customer built. And so I do have to be careful depending on the client, but they will allow that window where I could bring, future clients or people through at that, to tour the home and see the quality, see the finished product. But you actually get a window like every June where you get to bring a ton of people, so they get to see Raykon. And I know I went up there, and everyone has this reputation the reputation you've built and the perspective that everyone has in the public of Raykon. They've seen your homes. Like, they're amazing homes, great quality, and they're unique. And so speak about what the parade of homes is and really how that's benefited your business, especially as a new business owner.
The parade of homes I can't speak highly enough of the parade just because of what it's done for me and my business and how it's just allowed me to get out there and form the brand and just be present and be out there. From what we have, and maybe I'm just so spoiled because the system and everything was established before I became a builder. They've been doing the parade of homes here in the Valley for I think 40 years or something that's ridiculous. And so this is not a new theme. However, when I was young, and frankly, when I was a kid, They'd have these parade of homes and me to get an understanding of what it does. But what I did was, I'm actually a grandson of a builder and a son of a builder. And so I've always been in the construction industry, but I've always put those parade of homes builders at a different platform. Whether they were better builders in the industry or not, I just, in my mind, for the public view, right, was putting them as a better one of the better builders in the area. And so, interesting enough, as life went along and my career happened, and I started my business, I started to put that as one of my goals, in getting a home into the parade of homes. And since that started, which my first entry in the parade of homes was 2012, and so since that has started, it's the exposure and the overall presence is irreplaceable. There's no better way, and you know this, to market yourself, market your business, market your services, than to have a potential client or the public come through and touch and feel inside of the structure. Because there's a different perspective of the pretty pictures and even the Matterport views, walking through 3D. It's just different. You walk through and you can get the volume of the space and the 10-foot ceilings in the basement that not everybody does, but most people anyway. So the touchy-feely marketing that the Parade of Homes offers is invaluable, because you're right. When we build the non-parade homes, to have that open house, it doesn't have the same, because let's just say you do an open house. Well, it's probably going to be prior to the homeowner having their full home staged. So furnishings, beds, couches, everything, pictures on the wall, just everything presentable. It may be just the construction before they start to move their belongings in, which is still valuable, but the house feels different, right? And so that's what the parade offers us as builders here, is that opportunity to open the doors with a client who is up and willing, and it's just a real fortunate setting that I get to market and produce the building. Does it cost money for me as a business? Absolutely, but it returns itself hundredfold. I mean, it's hard to even quantify that. But the credibility factor of being a kind of what I mentioned before, a parade builder, as long as I can, it's kind of like keeping yourself relevant in the market that we have now. It's interesting because a lot of builders, highly successful custom builders in the Valley, they kind of, it's I don't know, maybe it's just me on the back end. It's kind of a phase into your career, your development of your business. The higher end that you get to, it's almost like some builders will get past the parade of homes, like they're, I don't know, better than the parade is the right word, or frankly, they just don't want to deal with the challenges that it creates. But if the exposure that I find in being in the parade year in and year out, and being relevant to meeting face to face potential clients who are now putting a brand to a face to the product, it's just a collaboration factor. And what I've seen great value in anymore, I do take pride in the salesmanship of myself, and naturally I'm the face of being the owner of my company. However, I don't sit anymore. I used to be there every minute of every day that the parade was open for. It's a 2-week, it's a 3-weekend and 2-week. It's like we're like open for 13 days of this phase. And I was there for at the beginning. I was there for everything. I've changed my my
sales model, if you will.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I've let my project managers sit in those homes. Let the public interact with them. I think it gives value of their development, their presentation to the potential client, or the salesmanship of that. But it also frees up an opportunity for different types of questions to be asked to project managers rather than the business owner that it might be. So some of my best projects that we've ended up building have been from the initial contact being with my project managers, not necessarily with me. And that's very rewarding in itself. As you're building a company and a brand, it's very, very rewarding not to have to be in every aspect of the sales position, because they're buying not necessarily Casey Cloward anymore. They're buying this is what I want. I want that, whatever that is, and we'll tie it to Raykon Construction because that's the brand that is portraying. That's almost as rewarding as handing over a beautiful home to a client that we've been working with for years. So.
Well, I have a ton of questions now, as you've gone on, and I want to come.
I kind of, that was a little long-winded, I admit.
No, it's perfect because I'm glad you share that, because there's a lot of value that we'll come back to, just from the investment and the logistics, and I want to understand that, but really, where you dangle that carrot for me is you're starting to talk about, the value as a business owner, as you start to see employees touch every aspect of the sales process, which we'll get into in just a second. But I think for context, because I feel like I have a good understanding of the parade, but for those that aren't familiar with the parade of homes in Utah, that's really unique. I think nationally, there's not really a market that has the prestige, the attendance that Utah does. So what is the parade for those listening? Can anyone attend? Like, what does it consist of?
Great question. Yeah, and you're right. There's nothing, our executive officer of the Home Builders Association that we're involved with that puts this all together. They tour and understand the NAHB, the National Association of Home Builders. There's not. It's hard to say that there's a lot of similarities within Utah. There's some similarities, but actually, and I'll put a plug in here. When I was the president of the Utah Valley Home Builders Association in 2018, that year we were voted to be in the best parade of home experience that any association in the whole country put on. So again, my involvement into this great program is fantastic. But what it is the home, we as home builders will apply our homes to being selected to be into this parade of homes. And the parade varies from region to region, but ours has gone up to 40 homes and as low as well, in previous years. But usually we stem around 25 to even up to 40 homes in the last 5, 6, 10 years. And so I think this upcoming 2022, we're going to have 28 homes being showcased. We enter in that application, and upon approval, we have to have the timeline and the schedule, everything committed to be able to have everything done. Our association doesn't allow the homeowner to live into the home prior to the parade of homes. And it can't be a model home from Production Builders or whoever might have a model home. So this is going to be a brand new product, something that hasn't seen the market or anything. And so it's new from the very beginning. The client, the public at that point can purchase tickets. I think $20 tickets or whatever for the entry into these, let's call it 30 homes. And this is not a community base. It's a region in Utah Valley. Utah County is kind of where ours are stemmed at. And so you buy these tickets and they have the maps. We have an app that we follow and we can go and just enter in. All of the app is giving you pictures and descriptions and stuff like that. And so a lot of parade goers will go to, let's say, 5 homes. And they'll pick out the best 5 homes because they only have an afternoon or whatever. Some of them will see every single home and they love it. And so it's turned into a tradition for a lot of families and kids, and you see a lot of moms and their daughters going through these things. We have from visitors from Arizona like yourself came down. A lot of people from Idaho come down. There's a lot of people we have followers from Texas and Wisconsin even. It's pretty impressive the amount of attention that our parade and frankly our followers get it. We market it through social media and do a good job that way, but it's just one of those events that gets looked forward to. And then once you've been there, the value of going in and seeing the latest and greatest and to meet people and to tour homes, everybody likes to go through and see these homes, even if they can't afford them, or they have no interest in buying home or building at any time. It's still a fun outing and a social event, and so it's just something fantastic that has been established and put through. So I don't know if that gives you a little bit of perspective of what it is, but it's a year in and year out we grow bigger and bigger, and so. We sell right around just under 40,000 tickets. It's probably in the 35 to 40,000 tickets for that period. And then I'll get, I'm fortunate enough to be one of the higher attended at times. Sometimes it's based on size of home. Sometimes it's based on cost of home or whatever, who gets the most. But the highest amount of visitors in that 2-week span, you'll get around 22 to 25,000 visitors in there. And so, again, to get that amount of public into your home is something you can't replace that type of marketing. One of the things that we've done, and COVID has introduced this, is they've put a virtual tour out. And so we nationally, this is something you can buy the ticket and you can tour the home with a 3D Matterport, or they have the video and the pictures alike. So they've figured out ways to allow for even those who cannot travel and come into the parade. There's still ways to even view virtually as well.
I love that. And what's really neat, I'll say for years, I've known a lot of architects and designers, not just in Arizona, but all around the West Coast, and Western region of the U.S. that go every year. I mean, every June they're in Utah, they're touring the parade. And when I went this year to your project, and a few others, Casey is interested on our fly back. I mean, there had to have been 30 people that were just there for the parade that we had met, come back to Arizona. And as you mentioned, it's just a whole plethora. And the value add, as you think about it, I know there's a huge investment from you. There's stress, there's logistics, trying to hit this timeline, but be able to say you've had 25,000 people walk your project, right? I mean, just think of, the bandwidth, the impressions, and although the Matterport and the virtual is great, as you said, it's different when you're in there and you're looking and you're seeing firsthand. And fortunately for my wife and I, you gave us the private tour and we got to understand a little bit behind the scenes of some design specific things for the client that was really unique to them and for them personally, which was even more important that even those touring may not get. And so how does that work from a client side? I know it takes a commitment from the client to say, hey, we're hiring Casey. We're doing the Parade of Homes of Raykon. We're going to have 25,000 people. And, so logistically, architect, designer, furniture, right? Having this done, hitting this timeline, the client approval. I mean, speak to just the challenge. Is it tough to get a client to sign up, or is it something that they're like, hey, we're okay showcasing our home?
Yeah.
Because you've done it, and the reason I asked that, and let me just interrupt here, Casey, because what's amazing is I think you've said you've done this since 2012. So you're going on 10 years straight of a parade. So you've somehow figured out, you've cracked the code to have 10 people commit to you, and then you've figured out how to do the building process, which to me is just amazing because I know what it takes for you to get this done at this time, especially through COVID last year, and I just can't imagine the logistics behind that.
Yeah, so funny you say that, and I'm kind of one of those
glutton for punishment.
Yeah, and I, not embarrassingly enough, but man, I've put myself into some pretty tight situations. So you said 10, so if you do the math, so I'm 12. I did 2012. We're coming up on 22, so I've already had
11.
10. So I'm coming up on 11 straight years.
Yep.
That I've done it. And you said 11. So the interesting side of that is, for whatever reason, it's important for me. It was a good business goal for me from the very beginning to have a parade home and stay consistent. So I was, a young builder. I had a lot of energy, or I still have energy, right? But but I started to make sure I wanted to hit that goal, and so I started to see these projects that I had on my plate that were potential candidates for parades. I started to offer these parade homes, and all the very first year that I put a parade in, I had two homes in the show. The next year I had only one, but then the next like 7 years I had two parade
Oh
homes
my gosh.
in the show. And there's benefit for that. And I think a lot of people speak to the growth and the time period of, and you yourself has done an amazing job at that. But I can only give a lot of this credit again to the exposure that I've had during the parade. So in 11 years, I will have had 18 parade homes showcased during that span of parade phase. So it's tough. It's not an easy. The hardest thing about it is that schedule, and I'm not going to lie. It's a hard. It's a challenging thing anyway in construction in general to commit to schedules, but when you have that time that's not flexible and that you can't explain that, there's a product that's been overseas and can't get it, you just have to figure it out. So when I get into the discussion anymore of is it going to be is it a potential project to offer parades and do I have one lined up or anything like that? It's kind of in the back of my mind as things get through. Some of the value that the parade, the homeowners receive from the parade are there's a couple of pros for that. I'll give that. So a salesmanship from a builder to a potential client to now that you're a client, this is why a parade might be a good fit for you. Number one, in my conversations anymore, the best benefit that you can have is you can plan life because your schedule is going to be completed. Your home is going to be completed in June, and you're going to be able to move into it after the parade. So you can put your house up for sale. You can go on vacation. You can plan on having your house done. Where in non-parade situations, I don't know if I can give that assurance that my schedule is going to be as tight as that, right? I mean, I want to, but there's just no, there's just more urgency on a lot of levels.
And there's back-end help.
Home build.
Yeah, there's back-end help, as you mentioned.
There's back-end help, but there's also on the back, in the back of your mind as a homeowner, they also have the urgency plugged into because they bought in on this thing, and so they won't drag their feet on the decisions as well. And maybe there'll be a more of a value into that. And so I've seen that, right? So that's going to be my first pro for the homeowner. The next, honestly, there's brands out there that we are receiving a significant discount for their services or for their brand exposure or whatever. They see the value in having this type of things. I mean, Wool Sub-Zero is coming into my kitchens, and they're seeing they want to hire Raykon Construction, and they see that's what the appliances is, that they give a hefty discount within that thing. And so there's give and take there. Now, I will say this, and I always say this, is those discounts are oftentimes spent because the client has a perspective of maybe going into the lower level, the basement floor, into the girls' bathroom. They'll go and put this very expensive tile or this wall treatment or anything because it would be cool to showcase that during that 2-week period of the parade. Where if we're not doing it as a parade home, it might not be worth spending the extra couple $1,000 on that expensive tile or something like that. So the discounting and stuff like that isn't as easy of a sell as it used to be, because I have a lot of experience where people tend to spend more price per square foot, if you will, on parade homes for that to show it off, if you will. And so, I don't know. I think there's something to be in this environment, this market that I build in. It's not showing off or boasting, but there's something to be said about not shying away from your successes and being able to have it showcase. I think that if they see that it's a help and a benefit for me or our brand, Raykon Construction, they'll kind of chip in. They can see the value in helping us out, because that's one of the things that we talk about early on setting expectations. Is we want to find the right partner in our clients, that they want to see us equally as successful. Like it's not a bad thing that we live in nice homes or drive nice cars or it's not a bad thing that we're successful as well. Look, you're successful, we're successful, everybody's successful, and so we bring it apart. So I think that there's a little bit of a plug in on allowing for our clients to support us as we're venturing out. And so yeah, the salesmanship there, you get into the logistics of the schedule, and that's just, look, you gotta, you have to have, you have to understand what is expected, and those honestly, you have to tighten everything up. So your systems and processes to be able to get the work done, it helps you dial it in. You don't, there's no forgiveness in it. So because we get fined, or if you have to pull a house out, it's a pretty big, it's a black mark on your reputation. And we work too hard for our reputation to be strong. So we figure it out. It oftentimes calls for all-nighters and late
Yep.
nights and weekends, and that happens. That happens on a non-parade home as well, but it doubles down, and you're able to get a little bit more assistance with your trade contractors as well, because they bought in on what the parade home offers as well. So.
Yeah, and I know that, as you mentioned, I mean, not just the back end, but you have vendors and suppliers that are really committed too, because they want their product shown in a great light. And a little plug for Pella, I know that, we were just out here for that, the holidays, but I know that they stepped up and they're helping you out, because lead times are really difficult for everybody. Yep. And I know with your timeline and the size of home that you're going to have in the parade this year, that there are some commitments, and, pretty neat that they're able to work out and make some things happen and expedite, which is great.
Yeah, and Brad, I want to make it clear that I understand that that these guys we'll talk about Pella and Sammy and how that kind of come into play. I'm not going to go to on the next project and beg or ask for a favor. I understand. I kind of put it in the back pocket. I'm loyal to my trade base and vendors and stuff like that. But I'm not going to sit there and ask for favors on every single project, because it's just not going to happen. I kind of, honestly, maybe I save them for my parade homes, or maybe maybe there's some strategic approach on being able to ask for some assistance when you get into binds like that. And that's any good contractor is going to be able to navigate through that and strategically plan on how to make that a success. So,
well, it's interesting. I had Jeff Dungan on just a couple of weeks ago, who's just an amazing architect, and he spoke a lot about just finding the ideal client, right? Someone that really understands your value. And I love that you were this personal, Casey, that you shared, having a client that really, it's not a one-way street. When you have a client that sees your value, Casey, they understand the work, the determination, how passionate you are about your business, about the industry. You have a young family, you have young kids, right? You're trying to build, a lifestyle, and you're building that for your client as well, and that they invest in you, right? And when you've really hit that level, if you will, or you've hit this camaraderie with the client that, hey, they see that, I mean, that's really where magic can happen, right? And as you said, hey, yeah, Casey, you may have this idea to do down in our basement, or here, let's do it. We'll spend a little bit more because we know how this is going to benefit you and your marketing strategy and company and people touring. I mean, that is such a value proposition to have a client that really has that mentality. And that's what, going back to the very beginning of our conversation, as you're sitting down and vetting that client, yeah, budget's important, timeline, relationship, we're married to each other for a couple of years, but where they see the value in you and they want this to be a showcase for you, it's unique. And I really love that, because I remember, a lot of us deal with trolls, right, through social media. And there's an experience I had. It was funny, on LinkedIn, I was posting this amazing house, and it was during COVID, and this beautiful house we were doing. And someone wrote on there, they're like, how, you have some goal, right, Brad, that you're posting about these like 1% of millionaires and that they're doing this house, especially in the pandemic. And it was interesting because I actually did a YouTube video on this, and I've talked about this before. That's like, are you kidding? Like, it's because of people like this that are willing to go out and invest, right, in themselves. And they've worked hard. This isn't someone that's like a trust fund person. I know this client, they've worked really hard to build this business. They've gone through a lot of down points, and here they are to celebrate their success. But because of that, they're employing, in a house, you're employing thousands and thousands of people and suppliers. And so this is my livelihood. This is my employees and their families. This is our trade base and vendors. And so when you have someone that sees that and you see just, everything goes downhill and how much support it gives. And that's really, I think, what a lot of people miss. And it's not just the Bow Show, but they're investing in you, Casey, they're investing in Raykon, and then everyone that is under that umbrella.
Yeah, 100%. I have a kind of a mindset of, and this is for me as well. And I'm pretty, I would consider myself thrifty for just that mindset of staying within our boundaries or whatnot. But I talk often with our clients as they start to get into the design phase and the selections of these quality finishes and doing these cool things. Killer. Look, we have some amazing projects, and you do as well. But I sometimes see them step back and think, do I really need to do that or whatnot? But I push them and say, hey, don't apologize for your success. You can do this. This is something that is giving to your family, and you've come from an area and whatever. However this money came to you're successful. That's okay. That you don't have to hide it. I see you want to be humble, and I appreciate that, but don't apologize for it. Let's just make it happen. And so that kind of mindset of allowing for your clients to, and you said it, celebrate their successes is a good thing. And that's one of I love that in our industry, is we get to help our clients celebrate this phase or this project and themselves. And they've obviously put a lot of time, effort, and energy into it. Let's help them celebrate it and not apologize for it by any means.
Yeah, it's funny. I had Brian Harris, who's a good friend of mine that we're building for. He's a client of ours, and we've built before. He's cosmetic dentist, and he always says some people have the mentality of abundance, and some people have the mentality of scarcity, right? And where does that go? And there's a lot of value having the mentality of abundance. But as we move this along, Casey, because I want to be sensitive to your time, but you touched on something that I feel it's like that synergy, right? That transition is, early on in your career, you're building a business, you're building a reputation, you're at the parade of homes 24/7, you're doing everything, but you get to a point in the company where it's like, okay, we're at that tough transition, and to really grow, you have to have the right people. And I was speaking, actually, my producer, Greg, of this podcast, he said, it takes a special person to be in construction to manage, right? To manage expectations, manage clients, manage trades. Like it's more difficult than people realize, the day-to-day that you and I or our superintendents, our project coordinators have. But you mentioned this, you said, I saw success as my employees, my project managers get to be in the parade, as they touch, and feel through the sales process, through that client interaction. Because the reality is, as you grow as a company, you can't be, for you to grow, you can't do every single task. You have to be able to delegate, and you have to empower. And so speak to that, because they're not going to have, Casey, although you're super involved, the realistic, vision of this is you can't be involved in every aspect. And so, how has that evolved over the years, just hiring, training, and allowing them to have more ownership in the entire company as well as the process?
100%. So Brad, I think it's funny because when we first started to reconnect, I would say after our college years and whatnot, I actually thought that when you were AFT, I actually thought that you were I founded Raykon in 2008, and I think was it 2013?
Yeah, right? Good memory. Yeah, 2013.
So I actually thought that when we met up, I actually thought that your business was older. Like I had started after you had started. Anyway, so that's to your credit. But my first, I guess one of my most fortunate, I'll just call it fortunate, but one of my biggest blessings of my business development is that my very first hire was an all-star. He was someone that was a go-getter and somebody that I understood that and I could trust. And I saw that person. I always had this perception in I don't know if career or just understanding that maybe in the back of my mind that I didn't want to train, if you will, my competition. That whole concept
Mm-hmm.
of that, right? Um,
Yeah, because
so I
eventually you
was
may train
slow.
them, give them all the secrets, and they may go out on their own. Essentially, is what you're
Yeah,
implying.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And so I was slow to bring on any help, any partners or superintendents or project managers or whatnot. So when I made the impression saying, "Hey, I'm getting spread too thin and whatever, I need help," I hired that first kid, and I call him kid because it was an intern out of BYU Construction Management, which we're alumni of course, and to see the value that he was giving and the care and the ownership, even though he wasn't an owner, but he cared just as much as I did, and it was very impressive for me. It took me by surprise, not just somebody that I was having to tell what to do every give and take and train and do. No, he was going through and figuring things out without me, and I thought that was anyway. So it took me a while to get to that stage. Now fast forward to where I had his help and I've hired on, and now we're a team. We got four project managers. We have an office staff and administration and stuff like that. So we're a little bit more established as a business, but um, it's as a business owner, uh, whenever I am mentored or talk with with other business owners, that's one of the first things that I talk about is that it's to get the trust or to be able to trust and delegate responsibilities and roles so that you can be better at I wouldn't say more important things, but the business development side of things. It allows that time because you're right. You just there's just not enough time to do everything to ultimately drive a successful business. And so um, that development and evolution of where any new business is starting to ultimately where you're going to be. We have our weekly meetings with our clients, or sorry, with our team. We have our team meetings every week, and we have it slotted in our schedules, and everybody comes. It's just something that we've established and do. And one of the things that I do is I assign a message for, and I just alternate. Anyway, our message of this last week on Tuesday um, was there's a infinite mindset of how you're gonna develop your project or your success or whatever, or there's the finite, where there's a beginning and an end. The reality of this business, we're never going to arrive. I, However so strong and your business can be 100 years old, you're never going to arrive, and that's the beauty of it. And running and developing and establishing a business, just because you've been successful in year 2025, that doesn't necessarily mean you've arrived and you're going to carry. You have to do some things to mitigate that. So those businesses that have length, that have a lot of time and have really established themselves in the industry, it's even that much more impressive. But that's one of the challenges that we're always going to have in front of us going forward, right? Is that we're never going to have arrived to the platform and this is who we are. It's just where is the direction that we're going, and we get to make that choice, and I love it. That's you can't have anything better than that, right? I mean, is to have that liberty and that freedom to make those choices as a business owner going forward. And so again, me as a business owner, knowing that I have to have that delegation factor and find that type of mentality. And you know what? If I have a couple of employees that choose to go a different direction for career path purposes, that's okay. And I'm okay with that. It took me a minute to be okay with that, but I'm okay with that. I had one of my best project managers just left me in, just left the company in, I think it was June or maybe it was August, because he wanted to go build temples for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's what he wanted to do. I'm never going to be able to build temples. That's not my direction. That's not my business. But in his mind, I want to go build temples. He took his experiences here, got a job in a position to where that I've restaffed. My business will be fine doing that and establishing that. And so I think that that's a comfort that I've come to understanding, that there's going to be a little bit of fluidity within the business, I guess, team and the structure that we have. But that's okay, because our brand and our business is stable enough to recoup that.
I love that you share that. I mean, there's so much valuable insight that you shared. And I guess selfishly, one of the advantages of this podcast, right, is I get to speak to people I really admire, such as yourself, Casey. And, now my next production meeting, I get to steal this inspirational message, but the perspective is real when you talk about, is it an infinite, mindset, or is it a finite? And the reality is, in construction, like, it's such a, we're learning every day. Our processes are better, right? Your Raykon today is much better than Raykon 2008 when you started, right? Every year you're building a better home, a better product, better systems, better people. And I love that you have this confidence that people will come, they'll go, you're going to find great people, and they're going to stay, they're going to believe in the culture and what you've set. And you've done a great job with that, with the company culture. But at the end of the day, you've built a brand, like you're in it. And so people recognize that. What made you start Raykon? I mean, where does that ambition come from? Why did you start it? Because you started in 2008, which was the most difficult time nationally in our industry, probably ever. I mean, it's just so tough. I mean, why did you start it?
Good question. When I was at school, Brad, I was always in the mindset that I was going to be working with a big company, being an employee, kind of working your way up of corporate America, and having a stable job and stable position. That's what I did out of college. I went and got a well-paying job at starting salaries and bonuses and everything that came out of college. And I started down that pathway. I went to Florida, worked for just over a year, ended up getting recruited. That was in 2007 when it was starting to kind of, you could see the direction. All my coworkers were getting let go or laid off or whatever, and I kept my position, but probably just because I was the youngest and lowest paid at that point. But I got an offer to come back to Utah, and so I was in Florida. I ended up coming back from Utah, which is where I'm from, to build an apartment complex in downtown Salt Lake, and it was in commercial construction as I decided to go that route. Again, working for a big company, getting the benefits and everything that going forward, going that. I found myself kind of doing everything by myself. I didn't have the back end support that I was hoping for in a company like that. So I felt like I was doing a lot by myself anyway. The project ended, and they didn't love how it ended, nor did I love how I was treated. And anyway, push came to shove, I got fired in 2007. So December 2007, I get let go, and decide to. At that time, my background is actually hands-on general contracting on a lot of levels. Kind of my passion starter was finished carpentry. And so I had a little bit of side moonlighting projects, just little. I mean, nothing, a couple extra $1,000, just to help, just in my dad's woodworking shop. When I got laid off, I had to finish a couple projects. And anyway, people started to pay me for, I was in the position of, maybe I should go get another job. Maybe I should get a job. Maybe I should, I can always go get another job, or maybe I can make this thing, I've never really, my dad was self-employed, and I never really had a lot of desire to go this route. He worked his tail off, and anyway, just for several reasons, I just didn't have that desire. I started this woodworking / general contracting business. out of a garage, we'll just call it. And that's in 2008. I started to be pretty good at. I was always a good carpenter. And I had passion for it. And so I started to build furniture and sell it, and started to do smaller projects here and there and sell it. So push came to shove. Honestly, what pushed me to go that route is me getting fired and needing to provide for my family. I needed to make money. I just wasn't really sold on jumping into, in that time of the market, not a lot of people were hiring. I probably could have found a job, but not a lot of people were hiring at that point anyway. So it was actually probably easier for me to sell my services rather than sell myself to a company to go make a comfortable living. So so I just kind of started there, and it just kind of evolved. I didn't build my first home. We didn't go under construction until fall of 2010. So there's a phase of '08 to 2010. Didn't finish the home until 2011. That I was a trade. I was a finished carpenter. I turned in my little woodworking shop into a cabinet business. So I established a pretty good reputation with cabinetry, and started doing higher end cabinetry, which ultimately got me my first house, which a homeowner builder hired my cabinet finished carpentry business. And then I talked with her and kind of got my foot in the door, and to be able to help build the home as a partner-ish type role. And then ultimately, which got me the next, that got me in the parade, that got me anyway. So it's just kind of a roller coaster as it goes that way. But,
I love it. It's always interesting to hear the story because, yeah, as you mentioned, I mean, it's the refiner's fire. You're at your lowest point, you start your company, and then, with that, there's a lot of hard work. It's not just maybe some of us that admire you from Instagram or toured the home realize, just not only the experience and dedication you've had, including a college degree and everything that goes along, but I mean, there's a lot of work to build that over the years, and it's very admirable. And, Casey, one thing I'll plug, because I think it's important for people to understand a little bit about your hobbies too. I know you played baseball, college baseball, and I've golfed with you, and it really makes my golf game embarrassing because you hit it about 10 times farther than I do. So, I don't know how many times I invite you back golfing because I remember I'm like, I don't think I've seen anyone hit this green on a par 5. And of course, Casey does it like 2 hits, no biggie. But, so what do you have upcoming and exciting, for the listeners, to get in touch with you, moving forward?
Yeah. So, man, I kind of one of the, business wise, we have some amazing projects going forward. We have the parade of homes that are coming up. That's just something that's always a celebration for us on an annual basis, just because we know we kind of schedule we'll even take on schedule our projects, but we schedule our family vacations around it. And it's just kind of a part of our culture of what we do as a business. So we're looking forward to that in June. If those who are listening to this have interest, they can DM me or whatnot as we get in through into that. But uvparade.com you'll be able to get your tickets that way. Personally, man, I would say that I'm a fan of sports in general, but there's very little in my hobbies or my life that changed and to see the success of my 2 boys out on the baseball field. Baseball's been a key element in my life. I'm not going to discount that. From relationships to opportunities presented because of what baseball has offered me. I was able to play 4 strong years at BYU during that. And so we went and played in some amazing venues and just the events or the environment that we were surrounded by down in Tuscaloosa, playing Alabama when I was a freshman and beating the number 2 team in the country. And I was a freshman catcher doing that. It was, you can't replace that type of stuff. So baseball has given a lot to me. And so I coach my little league boys, and I have a lot of fun with that. And so we practice, we drive, we work, and there's a lot of life lessons that come within sports, and that's something that I will try to give back and relay on and seeing their successes. My 2 girls, I have a 2-year-old and a 7-year-old, and they're getting into their dancing and doing their friends stuff and whatever. So I'll forever support them. So, but the one thing about this whole business development and ultimately, working our tails off to do what we do is to provide for our family and to create these experiences that we can live our life, comfortably and have that successes. And again, I'm not gonna preach one way and live another. It's celebrate or not unapologetically live our life. And we'll go on vacations and we'll work hard and we'll do whatever it takes. It's funny. We just got back from a vacation over the holiday break, and you never work as hard as you work harder to go on vacation than you work twice as hard
Right.
to come back from vacation. And so it's not good it's actually not easier to go on vacation. It's kind of one of those perks that you get to do, but it's actually a pain in the butt, right?
Yeah,
so,
but it's needed.
But it is needed. It is needed, and we enjoy it, and we'll always do that. So.
Well, I'm 100% positive those listening, they're going to be inspired by your words, Casey, and you've been a great friend and a great mentor to me, and appreciate, just all you've shared today and your background. So in closing here, and one thing I'll say is I agree with the sports, just the competitive nature, teamwork, communication, right? There's so many valuable lessons that come from that, even for your daughters in dance and then your son's playing baseball. But, for those listening, social media handles, website, where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, you bet. So we take pride in our social media. We don't. So please give us a follow if you're an AFT fan. Hopefully you'll be a Raykon fan. We are through Instagram. It's just Raykon _construction, and then you'll find us on Facebook with Raykon Construction. You'll see our we do post on YouTube and whatnot. Website is www.raykonconstruction.com. Raykon is spelled with a K. There's for website purposes alone, I spelled my own name with a weird wording, but Raykon construction spelled out.com. And that, yeah, I'm all over. I'm pretty easy to find, so easy enough.
Well, Casey, you've been amazing. Can't thank you enough for spending time with us today.
It's been my pleasure, Brad. Thanks for asking, and congrats on your success. And I look forward to keeping learning from you, buddy.
Likewise.